Hey gang, let's see if third time's the charm here. Hit a few boo-boos. Okay, we mentioned this quick, I think, in a previous video on one of the rework videos. This is just a plaster pillar that my wife had picked up at an estate sale for really inexpensive. I think she paid like $10 for it or something, which is a score for guys and gals like us that are always looking for a model and don't have to spend $100 or a couple $100 on something this size. Plaster, hollow plaster, and you can see all this yellow build up in here. That shows it pretty good. You can see in between in here, and then in between the cracks. I think what this is, it sat in somebody's house for Lord knows how long, 20, 30, 40 years, who knows. It's all the grease and grime and dust and dirt and whatever's in your home just clinging onto this plaster. It loves this sort of absorbing moisture. I don't think this thing was ever sealed at any point, and it just attracts everything to it. I think that was the problem. So I've started off. You can see on this side here. Get to the side here. It's getting much cleaner. It's one of those things I just work on when you've got a spare half an hour here and there. You walk over to it and play with it for a little bit. Looks a lot cleaner. Getting there, a few things to work on. There's a big ridge here where the seam is. But what I start off with like 100 grit sandpaper on something like this, because that stuff is so caked on. You want to get the heavy stuff off first, and then you'll work your way up to like a 150 and then maybe a 200 for a nice, get rid of all your little sand marks. You can see the little lines in there. You want to get those off too. Up to you. I do. But anyway, to work on is I just use, like, these little files are awesome. They work great for getting into all the nooks and crannies. Little tiny chisels are great as well. We've talked about the Dremel before. Dremel is my best friend. And these little diamond bits that I've talked about before too are awesome. Just be careful, because plaster is soft. And if you don't have a good control of that Dremel, you can get in and really do some damage in there, and you want to really avoid that. Like a lot of this stuff, you can just get in there with a little file or even a folded up piece of sandpaper and get in there and clean out those little lines. You don't have to get in there with a Dremel, because it's pretty aggressive. So just be careful if you're using a Dremel. You don't want to damage your piece. So this is a perfect opportunity, I think, I've mentioned that I would talk about it, and that's about plaster. Plaster in general. What do I use? And people have asked me both on YouTube and at the forum. It's personal preference. I know Webb on the forum, like he has what he likes to use, and I have what I like. I flip-flop between what I use too sometimes. So I'll just start off with here. That just plain old plaster of Paris. That's from DAP. There's a million different brands. I don't recommend any brand over another. I haven't found any big difference anyway. There's something called Hydrocal, which is quite a bit harder and more expensive than this plaster, but I don't need anything like that. This is what I do if I'd pour into one of my rubber molds and I want to do a rework on a model. This is what I'd use, is this plaster of Paris here. And if you can see up on that middle shelf there, those are from last year. The spun plaster that I do, that's what I use as well. It's this plaster of Paris here. That's the one. Okay, and then the next one is just, again, brand doesn't matter, but it's just a drywall compound that drywallers or sheetrock guys will use. I like this powdered one. It's great for doing lots of little repairs. When I want to thicken up a pot, I don't know if you remember the pot that I thickened up about a month ago. This is what I used, was this stuff here, and I'll tell you why. Is plaster of Paris, if I would do a layer inside of a pot and then the next day I wanted to not pour it in, like Webb does a great way, is you make it really thin, or when it's really thin, you get it in, you roll it around in the pot. That's a great way to do it. I'm lazier. I like to make a little bit of a paste, and then I trowel it in about a 1/2 inch layers. I found this one's really good. What this one does, as soon as you start pouring it in, and if you look at one of Webb's videos, it starts to set, like it grabs right away onto the old plaster. This one won't do that. This one won't grab hold of the plaster and give you a fight. Like this one can be a battle sometimes if you don't know what you're doing. Webb knows what he's doing. This stuff I found is great if you want to do like 1/2 inch layers or close to a 3/4 inch of a layer. Any thicker than that, you start getting splitting and cracking going on. So I'd rather do it in thinner type layers as you build it up. I use this too if I do like big repairs. If I have like a big ridge here or something that I want to get to the same height, I'll just mix some of that up quick. It just takes a second. And the good thing is it sets in 40 minutes. It's ready to go, and you can sand it already, which is fantastic as well. Plaster of Paris, you have to leave it overnight and sometimes longer because it stays quite wet. And if you hit that with your sandpaper, what happens is your sandpaper clogs up immediately. It just gets gummed up because it's not dry yet. So this is the advantage of this one. You can really work on it fast. Like you could put a thick, a 1/2 inch layer and then, come back that afternoon and start sanding on it already, or put another coat on right away. Good for like minor repairs and that too as well. Also for little repairs I've done here, these are just different kinds, right? This is just the premix stuff that you can buy, all different name brands of stuff. It's just good to have around if you're patching up a model quick and you've got a few little bug holes that you want to fix, or fix a little broken piece on it. This kind of stuff is awesome. Easy to use. Open the lid, slap it on, and away you go. Sand it quick too. In a couple of hours you can be sanding that off. I do have a big bucket of the ready mix stuff that drywallers or sheetrock guys use as well. I don't use it too much because I just found if you go too thick with it, it starts cracking a bit, but that could just be me. So like again, it's a preference. Play around with the stuff. I mean, if you've got a bucket of that stuff of the drywall mud at home, try using it to see what you think of it, what kind of a job it does. So anyway, I promised I'd touch on this again. Any questions, just feel free to ask on YouTube or in the forum. And we'll show you progress before I get down to finishing this or getting the rubber on it. I'll do another quick video there. Remember again, with plaster, raw plaster like this, you have to seal it. Like I use concrete sealer, 2 coats. If you don't, and you start adding latex straight on to raw plaster, you're going to see what happens when you're brushing it on. It's going to suck all the moisture out of your latex like almost immediately. And if you go to do a back brush from your past stroke, the rubber will start pulling off, and you're going to have a nightmare on your hands. So just remember, if you're using raw plaster, you got to seal it first. Okie doke. Okay, gang.